There are two Brexit conversations, and neither of them is really honest. One of the Brexit conversations is that Brexit, or one of the Brexit assumptions, is that Brexit as a concept would have solved our problems of trade, decline. It wouldn't. It wouldn't, because our fundamental problem is that as a country we're not exporting enough, we're not producing enough, we're cruising along, and Brexit was supposed to fix that. It wouldn't. You don't do something negative and achieve something positive. So Brexit actually has, in some ways, made things worse, but it certainly hasn't made anything better. And then you have to ask, are there any Brexit benefits? I can't see any. And I should point out very clearly, in case anybody doesn't know, I voted Remain. But I nevertheless have criticisms about Europe, and I have been critical about Europe. Europe has been in need of reform, and Brexit in many ways gave Europe a certain impetus in that direction. So Brexit has done some good, but not to Britain. There are two Brexit conversations. The former is philosophical about the concept of the very concept of leaving the European Union. The latter is technical about the inadequacy of the actual Brexit deal negotiated by Lord Frost. The first, I believe, was a mistake, though I'm willing to concede it may have been a necessary one. The second was a disaster, and Chris Heaton-Harris, the former whip, understood this and sacrificed his career trying to fix it with the Windsor framework. What Starmer should be doing now is finishing that repair job, honouring the political settlement, mending the mechanics. Instead, he appears to be dismantling the principles of Brexit itself by deceit. In other words, he should be more honest and should preach return, shouldn't he? If he thinks return is the thing to do, that's what he should be saying. Instead, he's saying, oh, no, we must have Brexit, but let's just tinker with the engine so it can't possibly work. So we have even more pain. So we now have the experience of being dictated to by Brussels and barely getting any benefit. On Monday, today, Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen are expected to announce what Downing Street calls the Brexit reset. But what it resets is not so much diplomacy as democratic memory. And the pact includes a youth mobility scheme allowing under 30s from EU states to live and work in the UK, sold as a cultural opportunity. It's seen by critics as free movement through the back door. I agree. I think it's a good thing. But those people who don't like free movement will, of course, decry this as betrayal. The dynamic alignment on food standards, meaning that the UK will automatically follow EU rules with no say in making them, that, of course, is the natural result of being outside the European Union and trying to play within the European Union rules. And finally, the Defence and Security Agreement, giving the UK firms access to a €150 billion fund, but with heavy strings and limited say. Now, the deal also reportedly invites the European Court of Justice back into British life, the very institution that Leave voters were told we were escaping. Labour's own ranks are restless. Joe White has warned the youth migration deal will alienate Red Wall voters. Graham Stringer calls dynamic alignment a betrayal and says it gives everything up. Kate Hoey warns that Starmer is misreading the electorate and that Reform UK will feast on this miscalculation. Indeed, Starmer has managed to achieve the impossible, to create a policy too European for leavers, yet too passive for remainers. And this isn't statesmanship, it's triangulation without a compass. And then come the real-world consequences. Trade expert Shankar Singham has pointed out that the dynamic alignment could sabotage a UK-US trade deal, especially over agriculture. And American negotiators will not accept the UK as a satellite of Brussels and playing by the Brussels rulebook. Indeed, such a posture makes Britain both vulnerable and unattractive. Of course, you have to ask whether or not the American deal is actually worth anything that is being offered. And the fisheries, the EU wants 10 years of access to British waters, a decade. So now we're contemplating selling off the cod to buy back some cheddar. This, again, is absurd, but then we have pretty well destroyed our fishing fleet. So we have waters that need fishing. By whom? Brexit destroyed fishing. British fishing. All of this raises the fundamental question, what precisely did we leave for? Did we leave for the farmers? They're worse off. Did we leave for the fishermen? They're worse off. Did we leave for sovereignty? We've not got any. Did we leave to control migration? Worse off. Nick Thomas Simmons defends all this by invoking the phrase sovereign choice. It is apparently a sovereign choice to surrender powers one has just reclaimed. But sovereignty is not a decorative term. It means capacity, independence, and crucially accountability. And as Laura Koonsberg rightly pressed, to make trade easier, you'll follow EU rules? His answer, we're being pragmatic. No, you're being evasive. This isn't principled realism, it's quiet capitulation dressed in the language of modernity. So let me return to the point. There are two Brexit conversations. The former is the philosophical one about the concept of the kind of Brexit that we want, and the second is about the inadequate Brexit negotiated by Lord Frost. The former is about whether or not Brexit is a good idea or a bad idea in the first place. That's what the vote in 2016 was about. The latter is about the delays and the delays and the delays, the capitulation and the lazy negotiation. The latter is something that Chris Heaton-Harris sacrificed his career to sort out, leading to the Windsor Framework, and the former is something that I think was a mistake, but I am willing to concede that it was a necessary move given the referendum vote. The referendum vote, of course, predicated on deceit by the Brexiteers, by Farage and by Boris. Neither issue, neither the Brexit as a concept, nor the Brexit that we got, has worked. Starmer should be following Heaton-Harris and sorting out the mess left by Lord Frost. Instead, he seems to be dismantling the principles of Brexit itself. In other words, he should be more honest and just preach return. That's the point. This isn't a reset, it's a regression. And the British public, having voted to leave, may now feel that they're being led back to the edge of the EU pool, blindfolded and just told that it's a toe dip. It's not. It's re-entry without referendum, rule-taking without representation, and in the end, it may be the betrayal that turns Starmer's majority into his own undoing. This may be the point at which history will record that Starmer lost the next election. Because, four years to go, and this is a decisive point. Starmer needs to make a decision rather than mess around fiddling in the corner, pretending that words are going to disguise action. Words never disguise action. Keir Starmer wants to be remembered as the leader who soothed the wounds of Brexit, but his method of healing is to reopen the wound and apply Brussels-branded ointment. It may smell of pragmatism, but it tastes of surrender, and it tastes of mixed messages. And the political consequences will be swift. As Nigel Farage put it, this surrender deal could be Labour's undoing in the Red Wall. Or as Liz Truss, of all people, warns, this will be reversed in 2029. That's quite a threat. An admission, perhaps, that this is no reset but a relapse, an admission that she is on the verge of coming to an agreement with Reform UK. After all, she's in the political wilderness, and people in the political wilderness long for attention, no matter which party they might have to rejoin. Rees-Mogg is having the same thoughts. The question remains, will the British people accept a quiet return to rule-taking from Brussels, or will they once again be forced to shout from the ballot box that they meant what they said in 2016, or that they got it wrong, that the whole thing is a mess? If it's a mess, clean it up. If it's not a mess, fix it.